My name is Vicki Moore, the VP of Strategic Services Division here at Windows Management Experts. We would like to thank everyone for joining the call today. Windows Management Experts is a leading for Microsoft infrastructure and cloud solutions, a Microsoft certified partner with gold competency in data center, device, and deployment. WME has over 30 years of combined experience and passion for transforming IT operations through the development of solutions and products that make the job of our customers easier. WME's Strategic Services Division concentrates on the strategic talent strategies, partnerships, and acquisitions, partnering with organizations to assess and solve information technology challenges, leveraging digital technologies, cloud, mobility, infrastructure, and data. Please note that this session is muted to minimize background noise. However, we welcome your questions and comments via the chat box in the bottom right of your screen. Given the amount of information we will be sharing, we have extended the session for anyone that would like to remain in session for follow-on questions via the chat session. With that, I would like to introduce John Marcum, WME Senior Consultant. John is a Microsoft MVP, Enterprise Mobility, has over 12 years of experience in Config Manager and over 5 years of experience managing mobile devices.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vicki. So, again, I'm John Marcum, Configuration Manager. Well, Enterprise Mobility MVP is what they call us now. So I've been doing this for quite a while. Have some experience with non-Microsoft MDM as well. I was formerly a AirWatch admin for a large healthcare company, so do have experience with other MDM solutions and done a lot of work migrating companies from other MDM solutions to Intune. So that's kind of some of my background. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize up front to everybody. I'm doing this presentation from a Mac, and I am not a Mac user. So I'm going to be fumbling my way through some of this, but the Mac works much, much better than a PC for sharing the screen from an iPad. So I fumble my way through the best I can, so you guys just have to excuse me for that. I'll do the best I can with this thing, but it's kind of foreign to me. All right, so today we're going to talk about integrating Intune with Configuration Manager. This is the recommended solution. If you're invested in Config Manager today, the recommended method is to integrate your Intune with your Config Manager. You get that single pane of glass for all of your device management. There's some advantages and disadvantages to going Config Manager integrated versus not. We can talk about that later. So we're going to look at the Configuration Manager integration. We're going to do we're going to show device enrollment. All of my demos I do on iOS. I don't do demos on Android, and nobody uses Windows Mobile, so nobody really cares, right? And the last thing we'll do is look at how you can manage the devices from basically for your help desk guys, unlocking a device or wiping a device or what have you in case of devices lost. Excuse me. And that's really all the slides that I have. I don't like doing slides, so we're just going to jump into demos. So let's get out of this thing. All right, so told you I was going to fumble my way through this. All right, so I've got here a Configuration Manager current branch running on server 2016. I've gone ahead and added my Intune script to Config Manager, really just in the interest of saving some time. But it's super easy to do. You just right-click. Obviously, if I hadn't already added it, there would be the option to add the Intune subscription. And you just log in with credentials that have admin rights in Intune and add the subscription. It's a couple of clicks, but I just wanted to save some time. So I've also gone ahead and enable iOS management, again, just for the interest of time. But it's super easy as well. You just select the checkbox. There's a link here that you go to. It logs you into the Apple portal where you where you download an APN cert. The only thing that you really need to be aware of here is the person that goes out to Apple and gets this cert is the only person that can renew the cert. So what I recommend people do is create a generic Apple account that multiple people in your organization have access to. And that way, if whoever creates the certificate was to leave your company, then someone else has access to go renew the certificate. If you let someone, some individual put that on their personal Apple account when they leave the company, you don't have access to renew your certificate. So the only option you have when the certificate expires is to re-enroll all of your devices. So just create a generic account and give that password, share that password with some people. We will add Android support just so you can kind of see how difficult it is. It's a checkbox. All right, now we can manage Android devices. So the configuration of this whole thing is really simple. It doesn't take long at all. Probably the most common thing that people want to do after they configure the integration is some security settings. So most companies are wanting a PIN code, or depending on if the devices are BYOD or corporate owned, you may want to lock down different applications and access to things. So if you're familiar with Configuration Manager, we're using configuration items similar to what we do for PC management. So we'll just create a configuration item, and I'm just going to call this iOS security settings. All right, we're going to select iOS platform. I don't really care about Macs, but you can filter this obviously based on the device type or the operating system that's installed. So again, the most common thing people want is a password. You may want, I'll just check a couple things here. There's other things you may want. Kiosk mode, that's pretty common for like point of sale or like hospitals where they've got an application that they hand the iPad to their end users, and the end users fill out some paperwork and hand it back. So that's pretty common. Let's just stick with this. This is most basic stuff. So everybody's going to require a PIN, right? Six characters, pretty common. We don't really want it to expire in 3 days, but you may want it to expire maybe 45. A lot of people don't want you to reuse the same password over and over, so let's remember 10. You may or may not want to wipe devices on failed logon attempts. If it's a corporate-owned device and you wipe it, sure, why not? If it's BYOD and you wipe it and someone loses all their kids' pictures, yeah, you may not be in such good shape there. But just know that is an option. If you'd like to select that, you can. Most people aren't doing that for BYOD, but it can be done. And then these are just your standard settings. If you're an iOS user, you're really familiar with these. How long before the device locks when it's idle. 5 minutes I think is pretty accurate or pretty fair. Same on the password requirement. You can select different password complexities. It really depends on your company policies. Personally, I don't really like doing strong passwords on these things because it's hard to type on them, but some organizations definitely require that. So we're just going to leave it not configured. Same for simple passcode and fingerprint unlock. Again, that's really just up to your, what your security requirements are in your organization, but those are definitely options. So again, you can do stuff. Maybe these are company-owned devices, and I like to use hospital as an example because I used to work in healthcare. And maybe you don't want your nurses taking pictures of the patients because you don't know where those are going to end up. So, in that scenario, you could definitely turn off the camera if you like, stuff like that. Right. And you will see here if you've applied settings that aren't applicable to the platforms that you selected, it will tell you here, kind of give you a warning and say, hey, this isn't going to work on these platforms. Obviously, everything we selected is applicable to iOS, so we don't get any warnings here. We're just going to finish that up. And again, just like when you're doing PC management, you'll create a baseline and deploy the baseline. So all of this stuff is really familiar to, to most of you guys that are config manager guys. There's not a big learning curve here. I mean, this is the same stuff we've been doing for years, right? So it's not like you've got to go out and you've got to learn a new UI or what have you. This is you've all seen this before if you're doing config manager regularly. So once we get our baseline configured, we've got to deploy it. And let's see, I think I've pre-created a collection. Actually, I'm deploying this to users, even though it's an iOS-only policy. I'll apply this policy to users, and the device will realize whether the user is on an iOS device or an Android device or what have you. It's only going to apply the policies that we specified as applicable. So it's cool. You don't have to worry about creating collections for device types. Just create a collection, stick your MDM users in there, and have at it. All right. So, and hey guys, feel free to ask questions. So during the presentation, if you want to put questions in the chat window, that's awesome. I like questions. I like for this to be interactive. If you do put questions in, Vicki will field those questions and get them over to me. So if you see anything anywhere you'd like me to stop and go more in depth or talk about things, feel free to do that. And we'll also hang around for a few minutes afterwards so we can take questions in as well. So probably the next thing that everybody wants, obviously, on their mobile device is email, right? So we'll do, where am I? An email profile. Let's see, I'll just call it, why not iOS email? I'm lazy, I don't like to type. So I've got this over here. This is the account name is what the end user is going to see on their device. So, people are typically putting their company name, and then depending on what you want, your different needs for your organization. Some people only like to do, maybe a week or a month of email, and some people are cool with doing unlimited and getting their entire mailbox on their device. So that's kind of a decision point for you, obviously. So we'll just say unlimited. You've definitely got some options here. So if you want to keep your company email inside of your bubble, so to speak, you can do that. So if you don't want to, if you do want to allow the messages to be moved between other email accounts or applications or what have you, then, you have those options. A lot of users like to synchronize their recently used email addresses. That's kind of like the little drop down in Outlook. I can't think of what it's called, but when you start typing a name, it auto-populates, so it'll pull that stuff. Then you can decide what to do as far as contacts, calendars, and so forth. Typically, I just do them all, but some people don't like the contacts because it can kind of get messy. So it's kind of up to you. And then we're going to just do all.
John, we do. John, pardon me. We do have a question.
Okay.
It's, will the Outlook app settings based on the native email client settings, or can it run separately?
Okay. So, okay. So let me take a step back. So what we're doing right now is we're configuring settings for the built-in mail app. So this doesn't have anything to do with the Outlook app. The last time I looked at it, it's been a couple months, we still don't have the ability to push a mail profile to the Outlook app, which seems ludicrous to me because they're both Microsoft products. But we can deploy the Outlook app to the device, but we can't configure the Outlook app. And if you do decide to use the Outlook app, there's there's definitely some pros and cons there with using the Outlook app, but yeah, those can run completely separately. They don't, they don't have anything to do with if you're asking, like if the user's personal emails on the device. Those run completely separate. The big thing that I'm seeing, the big kind of roadblock that I see from people about using the Outlook app is the contacts from the Outlook app don't sync to the phone. So, if your user's got, their contacts, their phone numbers and stuff stored in their email, and you're using the Outlook app, they can't use those contacts to make phone calls. And also, they don't come up on caller ID. So, in the iOS, I strongly prefer using the built-in mail. However, Android's kind of a different story because Android's mail isn't as secure as iOS. So on Android, I kind of like the idea of going with Outlook better, but you definitely got some pros and cons to weigh there, whether you want to use the built-in or Outlook. Does that answer the question?
So there was another question,
Okay.
in that same time frame, and you may have answered that through going through the answers there, John, but just in case, is this configured through the Exchange connector?
So what I'm doing right now is Office 365 email. But yes, if you're doing Exchange on-prem, then it does utilize the connector. All right, so once we've got the profile configured, just like everything else, we got to deploy it. There we go. Already got a collection created for my users there. This is a demo. Don't do this for real, but All right. Okay, so that's really the two most common things that people are doing right there. I mean, you saw that took what, 10 minutes maybe? You've got security settings and you've got email. So by far that's the most common two things. For BYOD, I don't really see a lot of people deploying applications, but you might, right? You might have like a line of business app, or you might have like Salesforce or something like that, or the Outlook app, for instance. Maybe Office apps or whatever that you want to deploy. It's a lot more common to deploy apps to corporate-owned devices, but there are some occasions where you'll do BYOD, and typically, most of my demos focus on BYOD because that's just what I see more of. Pretty much every company, it pretty much has people with, mobile devices that want email on them. So it's every company versus, a percentage of companies. So I always focus on BYOD. But I do want to show you how to create an app, even though I don't see it a lot out there. So again, just like if you're managing a PC, right, we're going to come to the applications. We're going to create an application. And for this one, I'm going to get an iOS app from the App Store. And then you've got to get the URL. So the easiest way to get the URL, I've already done it here, but if you just go to Google and type in Twitter, Apple App Store, it'll almost always take you directly to the right link, and you just copy this URL right here. So that's how you get those, if you're wondering. All right. And this is literally something that you guys can do in a couple of days. You know, especially if you just want to play around with this in a lab environment, you can set this up almost in the amount of time that we're going to do this demo here. It's not very involved, as you can see already.
Hey, John,
yes.
While you're in process on this exercise, there's a question. He uses Intune separate from Config Manager. Are they using O365 to get this done, or how can we bring this into SCCM?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Our company uses Intune separate from Config Manager.
Okay.
Are they using O365 to get this done, or how can we bring this into SCCM?
So if I understand the question, if you're using Intune separately from Config Manager today, and you want to integrate it into Config Manager, you have to get the authority reset, which is a phone call to CSS. There's no way that you can do it yourself. It's really common. I don't think it takes them long. You just call them in and tell them you want the mobile device authority changed, and then you can integrate it. But until you get that reset, you can't integrate it with Config Manager. Is that what you were looking for?
I'll send you any response.
Okay. All right. So we've got this application built. We're going to deploy it, obviously. Again, everything I'm deploying, you can see, is to users. And you can even reuse collections. You know, if you've got applications that you have on-prem, and then you've got, you know, you want to deploy the same app to mobile devices, and you've already got those user collections created, just reuse them. No sense in creating new ones. So we're going to make this mandatory. None of this stuff really matters. So you can do configuration policies here. I'm not really going to get into that, but it's for MAM policies. All right. So now we've got some security settings, we've got some mail settings, and we've got an application. So let's go look at our device now. Okay, cool. All right, so I've already gone ahead and downloaded the company portal on the device. Again, I just do some stuff ahead of time just to save time. But if you just go to the App Store on an iOS device, I'm sure the Play Store is the same on Google. But if you just go to the App Store, just search for company portal. It'll be the first thing that shows up. So we're just going to launch the company portal. All right, and I'm going to be Bob. I don't want you to get my super secret password. Everybody have Bob's email. Okay. Come back. Told you I don't know how to use a Mac. All right, so we're just signing in, I hope. And so we're making an assumption here, or I'm making an assumption here that you've installed Azure AD Connect, and you've synced your users from your on-prem Active Directory up to Azure Active Directory, which is a prerequisite of this. I'm just going to read some of these questions. I don't give my device. It seems to be having a hard time logging in. So the last time that I heard, the policies won't sync over from when you convert. It's basically like you're starting from scratch. And I think that they have solved the problem of having to re-enroll all of your end users. You used to have all the devices re-enrolled if you switched from standalone Intune over to hybrid. I think that has been solved. Don't hold me to it, but I think you can do that now without having to have all your devices re-enrolled. I know it was on the roadmap. I don't know if it's been implemented. Yeah, my device is not logging in. So someone asked about contacts missing unless they use the Outlook app. I haven't heard of that. So I don't know on that one. So yeah, so all right, on the we can about DEP. The reason I don't talk about DEP and BPP is, quite frankly, I don't see anybody using it. But yeah, you can do it. I mean, you got to buy you have to buy your devices from particular vendors. Like I know CDW. If you buy your devices from CDW, then they come already ready to enroll in Intune. I haven't seen anybody doing it. And volume purchase program, I did that years ago when I was in healthcare. I haven't used that one in a while either. I think that one works pretty well, but I haven't done it. You know, like I said earlier, almost everybody I see is using is doing BYOD, so it doesn't come up that much. I don't know why my device won't connect. Live demos, right? Yeah, your certs and stuff. Yeah, you'll have to redo all that. Yes, you can definitely do Wi-Fi settings and VPN. You can even do per app VPN. So all of that stuff is supported. Okay, let me try this again. This is funny. I just tried to click in there like I could type. Let me try. Yeah, I usually have a second device that's I usually have a second device that's already enrolled just in case this happens, but this time I just decided to go without a net, so we'll see how it goes. Come on. Where's my mouse? Come on. All right. Get back up here. I hate not having a touch screen. All right. So I got logged in. I don't know why I didn't want to log in the first time, but I'm logged into the company portal, and I'm just going to hit begin. So this is a really easy process for your end users. Microsoft even has this documented. I can send out the link to it later, but Microsoft has this even documented for all different device types with screenshots and everything. It's pretty well ready-made documentation, so you can just hand it to your end users. But I mean, it's not rocket science. You could do this, you know, in just a matter of minutes if you just want to document this and hand it off to them. But it's a simple process. Your end users should be able to do it, although I do see organizations that that do it for their users, but I don't think that's necessary. So I think this is kind of important. So a lot of people, when they go, you know, when you ask them, hey, we want you to connect your personal device to our corporate stuff, right? They kind of freak out. So Microsoft just came in here and said, okay, this is the stuff we can do, this is the stuff we can't do. And one of the most important things in my mind here is when I did AirWatch, it was, what, 5 or 6 years ago, I believe it was. Even that far back, AirWatch did track your device location. So I could literally log into the AirWatch console, pull up anybody's device. I could see where the device, not only where the device was at that exact moment, but it also dropped breadcrumbs. So I could see everywhere that device had been. And I was the AirWatch admin. I never enrolled my device in AirWatch for that reason. I mean, it's none of my company, you know, employer's business where I'm at on my free time. You know, to me, that's a huge invasion of your privacy. There's a lot of requests. If you look like user voice or what have you, there's a lot of people that are asking Microsoft to add location information in. And those are typically for corporate-owned devices, obviously. You know, one of the big things is like, I'll use healthcare again. And when I was doing healthcare, we actually wanted, for our corporate-owned devices, we actually wanted geofencing. So if one of those devices that a patient had used left the hospital, we wanted it to wipe. Another request that I've heard is from government agencies where if the device comes into a facility, they want the camera disabled. But outside the facility, it's fine to use the camera. So there are valid reasons to track location, but I don't think people should do it on BYOD. So that's really important to me to let your users know, look, we're not looking at your pictures, we're not looking at your text messages, your personal emails, and we're not tracking your device. We don't know where you're at. All right, and then we're just going to tell it to enroll. Keep my fingers crossed. This mouse is horrible. So the enrollment process isn't really that different than standalone. And really, I don't think the management is that different. When the last time I did a standalone deployment, there was some stuff in standalone I really didn't like. I think a lot of that's been fixed now, but for me, the biggest thing that I didn't like about standalone at the time was you couldn't use groups for anything. So like, I went into an organization with 100,000 users. Their help desk is hundreds of users, hundreds of help desk guys. They couldn't use an AD group to give their help desk permissions to do stuff like wipe devices. They literally had to go in and specify every single help desk user one by one. So that was a huge thing. I mean, I'm going to be quite honest. I don't keep up with standalone as much as I do with ConfigMgr integrated because, I'm a ConfigMgr guy. I do a lot more ConfigMgr integrated. There was some other things at that time, like custom reports that you couldn't do in standalone. In standalone, I believe that's been fixed or it's coming up to be fixed. But for me, the biggest things was you couldn't use AD groups for anything at all. Not deploying apps, not permissions, nothing. And I think that one may have been fixed too. But But that one was huge, and the custom reports was huge, and so both of those things have been in hybrid for quite some time. All right. It just seems slow today. I don't know if it's my network or what, but it seems slow. All right. So we're about done here. Oh, no, thank you. All right. There's my phone number if anybody wants to call me. That'd be great. All right. So the device is enrolled. We should see some stuff happen in a couple of minutes here. Oh, well, a little bit quicker than I expected. Yeah, I didn't expect that to happen so fast. So you see there that the Twitter app that we pushed, it's already there, so it's asking us to install it, so we're just going to tell it to install. So I did make that mandatory. Obviously, you don't have to. Don't want everybody getting my iTunes password, so let me do that. Although everyone would probably laugh if they knew what it was. Right. Oh, I typed it wrong. Crap. Let's try that one more time. Okay. No, I don't care about that. All right, so obviously we see the Twitter app is installed in there. Let's see if this has happened already. Oh, okay. So now obviously we're getting prompted for the password for our email account here. So we've pulled down our email profile. Again, I'm just going to hide the screen while I type the password. I think this is a good time to mention. So we can also control conditional access through the Configuration Manager console. You know, if your users haven't enrolled their device, then we can block access to their email or other company resources, you know, be SharePoint or what have you. All that stuff's right there in the Configuration Manager console. Apparently, I can't type my password today. Let's try that one more time. Okay, I think I got it that time. All right, so now we should see. Here's I called it SCA mail because that's my personal internal domain name. Obviously, I can't type my password, so we're just going to forget about that, or I don't know my password. But trust me, if I could remember my password, that would work. All right, so let's flip back over to Config Manager. So we see here already that the device is showing up in Config Manager under Devices node. One thing a lot of people ask is, can you change the name that's displayed here? And you can't change the name that's displayed here. So iPads come in as, or iOS devices will show up as whatever the name of the device is on the device itself. Android devices show up with the date that they were enrolled, and I think it's like the device type or something. I think that might be on the roadmap to change. I know there's been a lot of requests to be able to rename these. For BYOD, I don't think it's important. I've heard some really valid use cases for renaming, being able to rename the devices for corporate-owned devices, like, you know, for students or labs or whatever, where you've got a bunch of devices in one room and they're not tied to a user. In standalone, you only see I think that said you only see the last four of the phone number. That is, if that's what your question was, that is correct. We do not put the entire phone number. Again, AirWatch did that 6 or 7 years ago. I don't really have an opinion on that one way or the other. you know, most likely your boss is going to have your cell phone number. So if you don't want him calling you, I don't know what to tell you. For BYOD, what I tell people to do to figure out the device is just simply find the user, right? So we're managing users. We're not really managing devices. So come find the user, primary device. Oh, that should work. Did I enroll as me? Thought I enrolled as me. Huh. Okay. I'm not sure why that didn't work. It should have worked. By design, you should be able to go to the user, go to their primary devices. Okay. Don't like it for something, but there it is. So now I've associated. I know that this is Jay Marcum's iPad. So if I need to do stuff to Jay Marcum's iPad, then there it is. All right. So it kind of takes us through the enrollment and deploying stuff. You know, I did mention conditional access and some other things. So someone asked about email profile. I mean, Wi-Fi profiles and VPN profiles. Yeah, those work the same. Just trying to think. Something else I wanted to mention there, but I can't remember what it was. All right. So one thing that you know, I guess as it would be when you do a demo, something's always not going to do what you expect. I would have expected it to already come up and ask me for a password, but it hasn't done that. I'm not sure why. I'm going to try to give it a couple minutes to see if it'll prompt. It should prompt for a password. Let me just make sure. Dang it. Just make sure that the user's in the collection. Yeah, he's there. Don't do this at home, kids. Okay. All right. Let's give that a minute or two and see if it works. I think I forgot something. There's a couple questions. Let's look at those. Yep, I answered that one already. Okay. Yeah. Do we have to manually add users to devices or pull last logged in user? So it actually associates with the user that enrolls it. So it's a little different than last logged on user. It's whoever enrolls the device. So when you enroll the device, it becomes one of your primary devices. Oh, okay. So somebody says if the device isn't personal, that we are now collecting the entire phone number. How is Intune integrated with Exchange 15? Okay. So how is Intune integrated with Exchange 2013? Are there any Exchange server prereqs? You have to have the Exchange connector installed, obviously. And I think the only prereqs, as I recall, are permissions to make calls with PowerShell over to Exchange. Well, all right. I screwed something up. I don't know what it was, but that I should have been prompted for a passcode by now, so apparently I've done something wrong. So let's go look at some other stuff. All right, so we've got different things that we can do to the devices. Obviously, we can. The wording here is kind of funny, but retire/wipe. What that really means is you can do a full wipe, or you can do what we call a corporate wipe. So obviously, a full wipe is just what it sounds like. You're going to blow everything on the device away. It's going to be gone. Corporate wipe means we're just going to take off the stuff that we put on it. Works really, really well on iOS. Everything works really, really well on iOS. Nothing works really, really well on Android. And that's not an Intune thing. That's a device thing. You know, you're going to get that no matter what MDM vendor you select. You know, my thing I like to warn people about with Android devices, when you're managing iOS devices, everything works like you would really think it should, and it's the same. It always works the same because they're all, you know, they're all Apple devices. You get really different stuff with you get different user experiences with Android devices. You know, weird stuff like on some devices when you enable passcode, it disables pattern login, which people hate. The corporate wipe doesn't work as well. That's why I say, you know, you may want to use Outlook instead of the built-in mail on Android devices, because the corporate wipe does, as I recall, it doesn't take away the email. So there's different between the different platforms. They're different, and not all Android devices will act the same. So you can have one Android device or two Android devices with the exact same policies set to them, and they'll act completely different because, you know, it's open source. So, you know, the hardware vendor can change the operating system, and even between the same piece of hardware between two different carriers, you can see different behaviors. So it's hard to tell your end users what to expect on Android devices because it's going to be different on different devices. So just like to point that out. So we can reset the passcode. I'm going to tell you yes, even though we never got one. So on iOS devices, when you do a passcode reset, it literally just clears the passcode out, and the end user would then be prompted to put in a new passcode. It happens really quickly. With Android, when you do a passcode reset, instead of it doing that, it actually displays this big long passcode in the Config Manager console, and you have to read that read that off to your end user, who has to type it in uppercase, lowercase, numbers, letters, special characters, and all this. I think it's like 14 characters. I believe it's 14. So the passcode reset on Androids, it's not as good of a user experience, but it's there. Obviously, we can do it. Let's see. I can lock my device. I can unlock my device, and all these things, if I hadn't screwed something up, work really quickly, typically. So we do have the ability to bypass the activation lock now. So that was a big one for a while. And the really fun thing is if I can figure out a way to do this without messing up. So, excuse me. So again, you can take off the company's data, you know, email profile, applications, and stuff that we put on it, or you can fully wipe it. Excuse me, I can't talk. So I was doing this demo at a conference last year, and I selected the wrong device, so it was pretty funny. I full wiped my personal phone instead of my demo phone on the stage. Everybody got a great kick out of that. All right, so So we're just going to do a full wipe. Are you sure? Yep. If I can get it pulled up quick enough. Should happen pretty quick. Okay, it finally decides that it wants a passcode, so that should have happened a while back. So I guess things are just kind of slow, but I don't know why that took so long. Let me check out some of these questions. Oh, all right, you see in the background there that the device is fully wiped, or is in the process of doing a full wipe. So that took a couple minutes. There's a question that says, can we patch the devices? I guess you mean like do the OS upgrades for the devices. Not to my knowledge. I don't think we can. I know we can't with iOS. I don't think we can do that with Apple. I mean, excuse me, with Android either. I don't believe so. Not to my knowledge. All right. So my device is now wiped. And I got through the demo quicker than I wanted to. So let's go look at a couple other things. I think I had more questions last time we did this because it took longer to go through it. So yes, someone asked about the Wi-Fi profile. So it looks the same as if you're doing PCs, right? iOS or iPad, iPhone, Mac, Mac OS, and Android. So that's the same. You could even do that for you can even use the same one for all your devices. So that one's easy. VPN, I honestly never seen anybody do this, but you can do it. So it's there, I believe. I don't know what it has to have. Yeah, well, I don't know what it expects there. So I talked a little bit about conditional access. I didn't get into it very heavily, but the thing that people kind of get tripped up on is the difference in the configuration items and the compliance policies. So configuration items will just remediate. Compliance policies are actually used in conditional access. So you could do pretty much the same stuff. So let's say if the device I don't know. Let's just say it requires a password equals true, right? Okay. And then you would deploy that, and then that would prevent, it would prevent them from accessing anything until they became compliant. All right. Let's have more questions because I got through that demo too quickly. Has anybody got questions?
So, John, I've been following the Q&A and the chat. If you see anything that's unanswered or if anyone would like to pose any final questions, certainly feel free to do that in the Q&A session. And
so here's one. Are you able to create a policy that only allows certain Android models to enroll in Intune? No, you can't. And you also another big that's a good one, but I'll give you a more common example than blocking certain models is blocking BYOD altogether. That one comes up a lot. I think that one might be on the roadmap. I'm not positive, but you can't block particular models. Well, No, it would still enroll. You can specify a minimum OS level, but you can't block per model, not to my knowledge. What other questions?
Let me see, there were ones here too. Okay, so I'm not sure if you saw this one on there or not, John. When an installed app needs to upgrade, will Intune push the upgrade notifications, or will it route the user to Apple App Store and lose link?
So everything goes to the App Store. Actually, all the communication for iOS devices goes through Apple before it gets to you. So if the app comes, obviously if the app comes from the App Store, it's going to upgrade or update from the App Store, just like it was if you went and manually installed the app. So we're not actually managing the upgrades.
And another question is, can you go over the default enrollment profile?
Default enrollment profile? I'm not sure what you're asking. There's not a default. We have to create a profile. I'm not sure what you're asking there.
Okay, I'll send a response back for some clarification.
Yeah, we're taking note too of all the questions and answers, all the questions. So if you ask a question that doesn't get answered, or if I just don't understand it, we're going to follow up with you afterwards. We'll follow up with you individually on that, or you can always just reach out to me if you'd like, which is a good point actually.
There are two others in the chat window for you, John.
So, all right, is there plans for remote assistance for mobile devices through Intune? That's not an Intune thing, right? That's the device itself. So nobody can do that. I believe that there might be some remote control vendors, like I know some companies that use like ConfigMgr, and I think they may have a way to do it, but I'm not even sure that they can do it at this point. I think even through them, you have to connect the iPad to a computer. As far as I know, nobody can do remote control, but that's not us. That's what the vendor will let us do. Yeah. So conditional access policy. I touched on that one real briefly, but we can go back through it if you want, or maybe that question was asked before I went through it. I don't know. Yes,
so there are 3 additional and 1 forthcoming, John, and then I think we have your chat window up to speed.
All right, so the question here is, so what exactly is Intune managing? Remote wipe and enrollment. So Intune is managing, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. It's managing whatever settings that you configure in your configuration item. You know, obviously, I just went through a really simple example of what is the most common thing that people want as passwords, but you know, we're pushing those settings down. Once the device is enrolled, there, you know, a big thing I see is people will come and they'll say, email's not working on all mobile devices. Intune must be broke. You know, Intune has nothing to do with you getting your mail on your device. You know, we're not taking a request from the device, sending it to Intune, and then Intune grabbing your email and sending it back down to you. You know, so that's a big one that people freak out about. You know, we push down the policies or the apps or whatever, and then we just make sure that they stay there. But that's really it. Are applications designated to Win10 Internet of Things handled by Configuration Manager? I have no idea. I can follow up with you on that. I haven't done anything with Internet of Things Win10. I don't know. I have no idea on that. I can find out and get back with you.
Right, and that's probably an item with one of the other Windows management experts, SMEs. We could certainly ask that question of them. So
yeah, I can find out. I just haven't done it.
Mm-hmm. So I do have questions in the Q&A session. We'd like to thank John and thank everyone for joining the session today. We hope that the information has been of value, and again, welcome any questions. You can send questions to windowsmanagementexperts.com, and as we mentioned, we'll also push out John's email address for any additional questions as well. So again, thank you and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, if you didn't get that email address, it's on the screen here. I pulled it up a little bit late, and there's also a promo code for a 10% off of an engagement through WME. So I'll leave that up for a minute so you guys can get it. And again, I do apologize for fumbling through the Mac thing, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.